Hello, Culture Matters Podcast. We're back again with another culture topic. Follow me at JDRan underscore the culture man for culture topics on business, life, culture, leadership, and so much more. But they're, 1 to 3 minutes long. Today, I'm elaborating more deeply on one of the topics, which is navigating workplace dynamics, the art of managing interpersonal relationships. The art of managing interpersonal relationships. So think of like work colleagues and so on. For I don't think it's I don't want it to be understated. The leader sets the tone so on such a large scale with this because think about it. If if I'm forced to work with someone that isn't all in or is incapable, that's going to put a lot of stress on me. I'm either going to, and how likely am I to check out if I'm a top performer? Now, if you think about it in a scenario where the authority does hold people to account, what does that mean? Let's go back and look at accountability versus responsibility. Accountability is given in speech, taken in action. Responsibility is modeled. So the authority of the group of peers, um, interpersonal relationships, the authority is is direct and clear with the subordinates that are not living up to expectations. They work through that together or they remove them from the group. If they remove them from the group and or it's clear that they're working through where they're weak, all of their behavior, because responsibility is modeled, it's experience, it's observed, it's experienced through the senses. The other people on the team will believe that they will trust the authority's words because their actions are congruent with their words. And so the authority's thoughts and words are congruent, they're aligned with their actions. So that authority will have higher self esteem, be closer with their aligned with their conscience. Their confidence will come from a true standpoint. They'll be less defensive and open to constructive feedback, so their people could hold them to account. When the authority is acting out the values, the other people on the team they will think about accountability. They'll tell the truth to their colleague. They'll say, "Hey, you're missing this or you're missing that or what's wrong and is something going on?" Because there's enough trust in between them invisibly for the truth to be told where it's not a great risk for the person telling the truth if they notice that another colleague isn't living up to expectations. They're more likely to care about and cooperate with their colleague versus omit and stay in a silo and focus on just their task at hand. That's where you have really talented people working in silos and they're not sharing their competence and their intellectual property and their character with the overall group. They're kind of just siloed. They're either, and if they're engaged, we're only going to get so much out of them. We're not going to get an exponential growth curve on their labor, on from their character, from their spirit, or they're going to be disengaged and they're going to be leaving the culture because they've lost. They don't admire, they don't respect the culture anymore because A players don't want to work with D players for long. They're not going to want to do that unless they see improvement and the D's are becoming C's and B's and B's A's. So I can't stress enough that the importance of whoever when it's coming navigating workplace dynamics, the art of managing interpersonal relationships, a lot of that work is done by how those above, you know, each level, those authorities above each level are how responsible they're being with their job description, how honest they are, how constructive they are, how engaged they are and bought in they are, and the strength of their leadership is going to impact the interpersonal relationships of those below them in the competence hierarchy. Because trust and respect, right? Mutual respect and trust is going to lead to people being able to speak their minds and think, which is going to lead to productivity and meaningful relationships to develop in times of crisis, in where we're winning and when we're losing, and as we are navigating the in between to win together. I could talk about, listening and telling the truth and reading the room and uh, focusing on learning every day and improving and um, impulse control and all the obvious things. But when it comes to navigating workplace dynamics, so much of the team work, the ability for a team to work together, comes down to whoever their authority is to setting, exemplifying the values in their behavior and creating trust, creating the preconditions for trust so that everyone is working together um, beyond their sense of ownership over what it is, whatever it is that they have to do, whatever their job description is. People need to be able to communicate and work together towards a greater aim. It's like, how effective are our group gatherings? Well, that'll be dependent upon the quality of the questions, the defensiveness or lack of defensiveness, the empathy of the manager, the how safe it is for people to speak up without being penalized, whether that's made fun of or name called or even just slights to their character when they speak their mind. And I'd say disengaged management will inevitably be defensive and lower the likelihood of people telling the truth because everything will be taken personally because they're not actually doing their job. And I'm thinking about one of the rules from Beyond Order. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. If you are listening to this and you're in a position where you feel it's all out of your control, and you're in a culture that you dislike and have disdain for, what you can do is take absolute responsibility over the things that are on your plate and show up each day and do the best possible job you can for you and for the organization. And you'd be surprised what type of opportunities will come before you, whether in that organization or others, because you've chosen to show up in the best of your character. Because there's things outside of your control that you will not be able to, all you can do is respond to. You have the ability to respond, the responsibility. And if you take ownership over your job description at the highest level possible, what you're going to do is learn a lot about yourself and opportunities will open up before you. So navigating workplace dynamics is taking into account a lot of the lessons in these culture topics and keeping in mind that if you're in a position of you're an authority, you have authority over others, how you gain influence through, it could be through force or through respect and clarity, um, will will actually increase or decrease the amount of trust of your subordinates on a peer-to-peer level and make it easier or hard for them to work with one another. If you lead in a way where you pit people against each other, not even realizing it, talking poorly of other leaders behind their backs, spending energy on talking about people versus ideas, those are the types of behaviors that lead to silos and undermining of trust, which makes it harder for people to focus on what it is they're actually supposed to be doing and where they're actually supposed to be going. So in closing, what are we working on? Why are we working on it? How can we do it? Who needs to be in this conversation? How do we get them there? What do they think? Letting people speak and not without interrupting them, not taking things personally or more personally than we should, because we should take things personally enough to have ownership over them and finish or do what we say we're going to do. Keep our commitments to ourselves and others. Keeping our commitments to ourselves and others is going to build respect. Trust is going to come from not, a lot of do nots, right? Do not talk poorly of your coworkers. Do not talk behind others' backs. Do not name call. Do not um, interrupt while others are speaking. Some of these basic things that people forget. Do not leave early if you're expecting others to stay late. Do not come in late, you expect others to come in early. Do not contradict your words and your thoughts. Live within congruence of your words and your thoughts. Um, Navigating workplace dynamics. None of this should even be talked about, but it is a real issue it's a real issue at hand. Is the accountability conversation. Whenever you hear accountability, it means that there's a lack of responsibility of those with position of authority, influence, and power. They're not doing their job. And because if they were doing it, if they were acting it out, the accountability happens naturally. When we tell the truth, we create the preconditions for accountability, because all accountability is telling the truth and living truth, living the values, telling the value, like speaking freely. When we can't speak freely, the likelihood is people are not going to be living the values. When we don't live the values, people are unlikely to be telling the truth. So it's a responsible management that is actively engaged and able to hear feedback it will naturally create the precondition for accountability, where people are holding each other to account, but they're just telling each other the truth the way they see it, and they're able to work through the problems that manifest as the organization grows. More and more problems manifest themselves, and that's where value is created, through problem solving. So how we solve problems will tell us what type of culture we actually have. Follow me at Doran_the Culture Man on Instagram for more culture topics. Please leave us a review in the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.